I am sure this must come as a surprise to a lot of you, but I'm in fact an author as well as a YouTuber, and very soon the first book of my new series will be releasing. And I've been working on this series now for a few years, and so I can only tell you how excited I am to present this story I've crafted to the whole wide world. The series is called Gang, and luckily for all my viewers, is very anime and light novel influenced, so if you like any of the series I cover on this channel, I'd like to hope you'd also enjoy the Gang series. Like all good shonen stories, the main character of the Gang series, Alter Gamlin, is a kid with a goal to become a king. Not a pirate king or a wizard king or even a build king, but the king of crime, the most wanted man in the world and the ultimate gangster. However, I don't want to spoil any more of what I think is an amazing story for you guys and girls, so as a special treat, I will now be reading you the first chapter of Gang Fluid Justice as a sexy audiobook, so please enjoy, and if this first chapter gets you intrigued, then make sure to check out the full book when it releases. Thank you. Chapter 1, A Kid with a Dream. Gangsters, criminals, crooks, thugs, gangs, bandits, mobsters, yakuza, rogues, mafiosos, outlaws, punks and robbers. Such words inherently bring up images of evil and bad deeds. However, although many who you could describe by these words are indeed committing evil acts, just as many are only seeking one thing. These people seek freedom. That is the true goal of a gangster. Around 60 years in the past, when the world was beginning to grow tired of the oppressive Archon Empire, a new era began. Young and old alike looked towards a future of freedom and happiness. Those with the will to stand up began to rebel. As if overnight, gangs appeared across the globe in protest of the empire that controlled the whole wide world. Among these upcoming gangsters, several gained notoriety, being given prestigious titles or bounties on their heads. However, every time one of these great gangsters was arrested or faded into history, another would take their place. For every old legend, there was a rising star or a future king. Though out of all these legendary gangsters, only one had been given the true title of king, the current most wanted man in the world, and the one called the King of Crime, the Reaper. He was strong, smart, and most importantly, inspiring. He led a gang of only 11 people, but was still able to compete with armies or pirate fleets numbering into the thousands. Young people that life had left on the wayside looked up to the king, and those in the empire or its troopers viewed the Reaper with anger and fear. Some people joked about becoming the next king, but no one was serious. The Reaper was untouchable, and no one even dared to aspire to surpass him. However, that wasn't exactly true. There had always been legends in the past, so it stood to reason that several legends were still in the making. One such potential legend was a young boy of 16. He may have started as some bank robber, but he was destined to become a flaming star and shake up the gang world forever. This is the story of that flaming star. I was no older than 9 when it happened. I remember it clearly. I was sitting on the edge of my hometown, Bleakcliff. Yeah, Bleakcliff. It's what it sounds like, a bleak cliff. It's a small island in the Dead Sea, literally in the middle of nowhere. I loved to sit there. I could look out over the sea of fog and cast my rod in hopes of catching a fish, though in all fairness I never was much of a fisherman. Occasionally when the weather was clear I would see a distant island, and even rarer still a ship. No ships ever came to Bleakcliff, it seemed. However, on that day one did. It was a large ship, much larger than any I had ever seen. The mast sported the image of the Archon Empire, 2 semicircles connected by rigid lines. It always looked like a pair of scales to me, or more accurately, a pair that had been thrown on its head. I was confused by the arrival of the ship, and to be honest quite anxious. From the ship marched swarms of men in white, the Wets in White my uncle called them, so that's why I referred to them as well. We all ran in fear, scared of the men in white and what they would do to us. We hated the empire that stole our treasure and left us to starve. However, more than that, we feared their might. The men in white demanded we hand over the fugitives we were harbouring. We didn't know of any fugitives, but the empire would have none of it. They started to punish those who wouldn't speak, and eventually lives were beginning to become forfeit. Even I, only 10 at the time, was beaten into the ground until something that still inspires me to this day happened. Finally, someone spoke up. 2 men had approached from seemingly nowhere, their presences till that moment non-existent. We hadn't seen them before, though in truth they just didn't want to be found. The one who had spoken was tall and well-toned. He wore a black outfit and a grey cloth wrapped tightly around his head, covering his eyes. When he pulled up his sleeve, we all saw his tattoo. At the time I didn't know what it meant, but the others did. Looking back though, I now know who that man was. He was the 4th member of the Revenant Rogues, the neck snapper Brad Splint. His tattoo gave it all away. Though now I know of his name, back then no one did. At that moment, we just knew him as a rogue, a legendary outlaw, a human monster. They could have evaded the Empire's search if they chose to, but they didn't. Now don't get me wrong, they didn't turn themselves in, far from it. That one pair of rogues was enough. The ship left the same day it arrived. It left with heavy casualties. They may have been murderers and thieves, but to us, they were living in their own world. A world not dictated by the Archon Empire. A world we all wished we could live in. A world of freedom. To them, the whole wide world was their domain. They could literally do anything they wanted. They left soon after. However, unlike the cowardly Empire, they left without a ship. They simply threw themselves over the edge and into the fog. A sane man would have assumed they died. However, we all knew they were rogues. They wouldn't die from a mere fall into the fog. Later that night, I recall asking my mother about the rogues. I couldn't recall exactly what she said, but it was something like this. "So, my little boy, you want to know about them then? The Revenant Rogues. They are indeed quite famous. They are said to be the greatest gang to have ever existed. They have only been around for 4 years, but they have more heists to their name than any other. There are only 11 of them, but each is as powerful as an army, and not one of them has ever been captured. Their leader though, he is the real deal, the Reaper they call him. He is the most wanted man in all of history, and is said to be the strongest man to ever live. Though to be honest, things can be blown out of proportion, but don't mistake my words, the Reaper is the greatest criminal to ever live, and I doubt anyone will ever surpass him as the king of crime, even your uncle surely agrees." "Well, you're wrong, because that person is me," I remember saying. "I will start my own gang and I will become the greatest gangster of all time. I will become the king of crime." That's what I had said. My mother laughed and told me to do it if it was my dream, so that's what I did. As a dream is just a fancy way of saying a thing you want to do. Because isn't that the true meaning of freedom? Being able to do what you want. I am Alter Gamlin, a boy who set forth towards a dream of becoming the next king of crime. And that was chapter 1, and I know you all must be starving for more, but don't worry, as Gang Fluid Justice will be dropping next week on the 20th of January, in both ebook and paperback form on Amazon.com. Oh, and for those who do read the book, I want to give a little of a disclaimer, that being that I started writing this series and came up with the main concept before I'd read One Piece. However, despite this, the series is very similar to One Piece, like creepily so, and I just want to express that I did not go out of my way to copy One Piece, and I guess me and Oda just settled on the same main themes for our 2 series to cover. But who cares about all that, as Gang Fluid Justice is dropping soon, and I really hope you'll all at least consider checking it out, as I poured my heart and soul into this book, and really want it to do well. So thank you all for watching. Make sure to follow the official Gang Twitter account at gang_bookseries, and as always, I've been Seph the Sin, the Deadly Sin of Geek, and I am signing out. Stay safe, everyone.